The hardest battle, I would say, is the mom guilt, because I have this deep need to be a singer. And having these conflicting stewardships in my life, like, I love my children more than anything else. I also had to realize that if I sacrificed my career to be with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, first of all, I don't think that's even as good for them as I would have told myself. But also, no matter what I say, I would probably quietly have experienced a great deal of resentment. And that is too much pressure to put on a kid, where you say, okay, I gave it all up for you, now you owe me. My living my dream is a way of showing them how to be happy grown-ups. You have to learn to love yourself. That's the real difficult part of the game. Because the most beautiful part about singing, in my opinion, is that the greatest, most beautiful sounds you will ever make are the ones completely devoid of external tension. The ones that are actually honest and just you. The healthiest, best singing I have ever done in my life is when I felt really safe to be myself. And I felt really a high degree of self-acceptance.
Today I'm going to have a chat with Rachel Willis Sorensen. She's an amazing soprano, one of the world's leading sopranos at this time. She has an amazing voice. She's so versatile, from Mozart to Wagner, sings everything, including a lot of Verdi. And she has sung pretty much at every major opera house. She does a lot in Europe, Opera de Paris, Wiener Staatsoper, Bayerische Staatsoper, and all these wonderful houses. And singing all these roles all over the place while being a mom of 3 children. And I can't wait for you to listen to this interview because I had such a fun and great time with her.
You have to learn to love yourself. That's the real difficult part of the game, because it's way easier to feel shame than generosity toward yourself. But if you learn to love yourself, you also realize that the difficulties in your life are a part of your learning journey. So you can't prevent your children from you can't prevent them from ever experiencing challenges. That would lose them the opportunities they need to develop. The friction that you've had in your life, the hardships, dealing with that director who crossed all your boundaries, that firmed the boundary for you. And you made choices about your life based on those experiences. We need adverse experiences as a part of the tapestry of our lives in order to develop what we need to develop. About the imposter syndrome, about teaching singing on the internet, I had this too. When I started working with my press agent in November 2018, so exactly 5 years ago, she said, let's make a video. You can talk about doing coloratura. And I'm like, what am I, the poster child of coloratura? I hate doing that. Like, I'm not going to talk about that. And then she was like, well, just say what you do. And it was really hard because I thought, in order to put this information out there, am I claiming to be some sort of expert? But I realized something important. No, I'm not. Because if it works for people, if you're giving free advice on the internet and it doesn't work for people, like, okay, they find what works for you. Ultimately, everyone is responsible for their own singing. What I can do, what you can do, you're not an imposter because you just talk about what works for you.
Exactly.
At first, I was disclaiming all the time. I was like, so like, coloratura is scary and hard, and this is how I do it. But the funny thing is how many people were like, oh, that opens a new door to me. I took like a single voice lesson from something like 20 teachers. And very often I heard things that were not good for me. And it was almost like establishing the boundaries, like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't work. Ooh,
Like,
sometimes
you take the best from all of it.
Yeah.
You just kind of sift it out and be like, okay, this was great here. This I'm going to leave out, and I'm going to take this, but we're going to forget that part.
Yeah. So you can't feel responsible for other people's like development of technique. That's totally on them, particularly if you're on the internet. But I respect so much what you're doing, just going online and talking about what works for you. You're not representing yourself like, hey, excuse me, perfect stranger, I'm the authority in your body and your voice, right? It seems like inherently that would be the issue. If you're saying that, yeah, you're an imposter, because only an individual is the expert in their own body and their own voice.
There are a lot of professional opera singers who I believe have problems. When I look
Absolutely.
at them, they have so much. Like, I was very blessed to have a teacher that worked really well for me, and like, it's always what you should sing versus what you would like to sing. You know, I never wanted to be in this soubrette because I'm like, oh, but like the big voices and like the lyric lines, it's so awesome. Like, what about Traviata? I was like, this is never for me. I'm a soubrette, which probably contributed sometimes to the imposter thing. Is like, an opera singer is supposed to have like this big, gigantic voice, you know. Listening to Kathleen Battle always helped me. It was like, okay, she has this lighter, beautiful, bright voice. This is okay. This is beautiful. I don't have to have this voice. But what about the self-image? You know, like, everyone was born with an instrument. You just have that instrument. You can build it. You can tweak it. You can add resonance. But basically, you were born with a specific voice color. And I know there are a lot of my students, they have a problem with that because they're like, I want to be that Disney princess kind of voice. And I'm like, you can sing those character pieces. You have a dark, mature sounding voice. You don't have that little girl voice, which not everyone needs to have that. But what do you say to someone who feels like, I don't know, I don't like my voice? Have you always liked your voice, or did you have to work through some stuff where you're like, okay, I always thought my voice was great. I never really had a problem with that image. I knew I had limitations that I wanted to overcome in sounding better, but what do you say to someone who's like, it sounds horrible, I'm never going to get better because I don't sound like XYZ?
Oh, I'm finding I'm really triggered by what you're saying, like, because this is such a journey. And when I hear someone say that, I want to do this, I want to make myself into someone else, it's so heartbreaking, because the most beautiful part about singing, in my opinion, is that the greatest, most beautiful sounds you will ever make are the ones completely devoid of external tension, the ones that are actually honest and just you. So if someone says, I don't like that, I want to fake my voice to be someone else, you can do things with placement, with like mouth position, to like affect a color one shade darker or lighter than whatever is most natural for you. But the point is, you're not an impersonator. You have to be yourself. And so what I've learned, the healthiest, best singing I have ever done in my life is when I felt really safe to be myself. And I felt really a high degree of self-acceptance. And somehow it's like an analogy. When you can't accept your voice, it's because you can't accept something about yourself. And a lot of people believe that if they berate themselves, if they're very critical, if they're even cruel toward themselves, this is the way to usher in positive change. That is not true. It's been studied, it's been debunked. The birthplace of all positive change is self-acceptance. I'm suddenly able to sing much lower, and my high is more stable than it used to be. But anyway, in the beginning, I had this like fake disembodied extra part of my voice, this extension very high. And I would sing all this coloratura stuff, and I thought like, that's what I am, because that's what I want to be. But then when I remember someone cast me in college to sing the Countess in the Marriage of Figaro, and it's like noble and stable and boring. You're always in the middle voice. I was like, what is it? Where are the high Fs? Like, I wanted to sing super high. And I remember my teacher saying, this is what you are. Like, this is what, and I was like, I'm boring. I'm a boring voice. I don't just sing like Lucia because I wanted to sing, you know, the like Fifth Element. So, I mean, and I sort of could do it, but it wasn't my native gift.
To be honest, like, low pitches are a struggle, really. But as a soubrette, you have to go there to the low A sometimes, and you're thinking, Mozart, what are you doing? Like, how can you go from the low A to a high C in one syllable? Who did you write this for?
Yeah.
But it was that flexibility that I then started appreciating. I was like, oh, I can do that. And it's so easy for me. And I don't have to warm up for half an hour. I can warm up 5 minutes and my voice is there because it is light and bright and fast. And that's when I was like, it's actually pretty cool.
See, that's funny. I had the opposite experience. I was taught like, yeah, I remember if I think back on this, like what she was asking now, now that I conceptualize the human instrument in such a different way, it was just a high larynx. But she wanted me, my first teacher wanted me to get like in the mask and like drive everything into mask. So it was really pushy and really high larynx. This is the kiss of death for anyone actually. But so when I found the depth in my voice, then I found the freedom. It's like instead of like this, I had to sing like this, like it just relaxed, just a free larynx. Ideally, you develop the technique to have the facility to move the voice freely in all registers on all vowels. Like your range is biological. What you're able, the pitches that you're able to make are biological, but there should be a significant range, like at least 3 octaves. And that's the thing. The way that I conceptualize singing, what I figured out when I had like a click moment was if it feels the same in here, it sounds different out there. If it feels different in here, it sounds the same out there in terms of passaggio, right? So like the low pitches, I used to hold my head voice and bring it down, right? And then it sounds weird in the room and squashed and quiet. Then I realized if I shift gears and sing the low pitches in a tall version of my chest voice, I get a lot more sound. It doesn't cost me anything. I'm not pushing or driving. And this was a huge difference for me. It was also kind of age, like as I aged, it sort of relaxed into my chest voice. But most women are speaking in their chest voice. Yeah. So it's not like the chest voice doesn't exist. It's just most people singing classical don't know how to integrate it into their head voice because we predominantly focus in the top. But you're right, Mozart wrote low A's in soubrette repertoire. Everybody has to access. Though the low A is not meant to be performed in your pure head voice. In order to prevent anemic high notes, you have to have chest resonance all the way up, even a coloratura, even on an F for Queen of the Night. It's like, we all need these things.